Welcome to another episode of Pivot and Prosper. This is a podcast where we speak with entrepreneurs, business owners, and C-suite executives in the marketing industry to hear their stories of growth with relentless perseverance. Today, I have the joy of introducing Brooke Bradshaw from Seattle, Washington. Brooke is the co-founder of Martech Consulting Group. She's been a marketing leader for almost 20 years. Now, her business focuses on helping mid-sized and large businesses examine the barriers to revenue growth that might be related to the people, the processes, the tools, or the leadership in their organization. Brooke, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me here today.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Let's get right into it here. Now, I know we talked a little bit before I pressed the record button, and I've learned a lot about you, and I feel like a tremendous value to be had with education on the industry coming up here. So let's roll right into the first question I have. Tell me about your current role and what problem that your business solves, and ultimately what you've created as the solution.
Yeah, great question. So, as the co-founder and principal in Martech Consulting Group, we are specifically out to address, as you said, gaps in revenue. So this could be happening as a result of attribution being broken. So the MarTech stack not being what it needs to be in order for the business to correctly determine, did that marketing campaign do anything? Sometimes it's the people, particularly in an era of layoffs and attrition. Sometimes the folks who are on teams might not be what is needed in order to achieve the goals that are coming in the coming year. Sometimes it can also be the processes. So we'll speak a little bit about my experience in the manufacturing industry, where we like to help organizations determine if borrowing some of those agile ceremonies from those manufacturing environments can create efficiencies in how the teams are working together to produce marketing.
I love it. I love it. Sounds like the key areas in the operations and good lean marketing and no time wasted for efficiency and effectiveness, right, are key things here, which I love to hear. Talk to me about um, what have you struggled with most in, I guess, in this current role, and with either growing the business or with clients or both.
Yeah, so when a consultancy is brought in, oftentimes the individual making the decision to allocate the budget is C-suite. So leadership will have different objectives and goals for the engagement. Then when our consultant deploys, sometimes it's me as a fractional CMO or another consultant in my organization. They're embedded in the team with a project leader and the implementation team. And one of the things that I have found to be particularly challenging and rewarding when you do it correctly is ensuring that you are able to build the trust with the project leader and the implementation team needed to get at the root of what is happening so that you can also fulfill the expectations of the decision maker who brought you in. So that tension is something that sometimes keeps me up at night, and I do feel a deep sense of gratification when we nail it.
I love it. Communication, right, is key, and when there's a lack of communication, what this causes issues not only in life and relationships, whatever, but our business as a whole, right? And it's
Mhm.
interesting to see, especially as businesses grow, how communication at even the lowest level up to the highest level is they're lacking of,
Mhm.
and all that extra time spent doing activities where, all right, if we put the right processes and components in place, connect the right dots here, sometimes just as easy as that, what the flow could be growth into, right?
And I
How do
like
you
to say
think?
communicating up, down, and around.
I like
So the
that.
communication in each direction.
And all, I agree. I agree. I may have to use that and say at the dinner table tonight as a reference.
Feel
How
free.
do you think technology, it's a big one, right? How do you think technology is reshaping the way we understand and reach our audiences today compared to 5 years ago?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say AI, and I bet 90% of your guests probably point to AI. I actually think that one of the biggest challenges that organizations are facing today is this tendency to divest in infrastructure. And so we've lost a little bit sight of what the consumer truly wants. And I think that personally, me as a consumer, I feel very helpless these days. And I think that things are more expensive, and doing business is more expensive. And I think that there is a lack of understanding about what ripping out the backbone of the platforms that are needed to stay in touch with what the consumer wants and what's going to drive their satisfaction and come back as repeat users of the product or the service or the business. So I think that that is something that is a shock of cold water to many of my clients. It's around investing in the right customer support platforms and getting back in touch with the voice of the customer by spending some money on technology, unfortunately.
I couldn't agree more. Customer service is not a department. It should be the entire company of value to the people who are interested in purchasing that product or service, whatever it may be. And I agree too. There's of in a world where it was, why do people buy a product or service? To solve a problem. Also, why do people buy? Well, now the influence of branding, which is
Mhm.
now more important than ever as we grow. What is that brand? What are the emotions that come out and the feeling that is invoked and the service you're going to get when purchasing that product or service? And you may not even need it. It may not even be solving a problem. It's, I everything on that back end, the infrastructure, as you mentioned, the customer service department, all these people, the feedback, et cetera, the feeling I got when a package came to my door and everything was on time and correct and no hassle,
Mhm.
I just want to keep buying. And so many companies miss out on that, of the core essential components that, as you mentioned there's, when those pieces come in, that growth is, it's easy to shift from one branch to another now, but the ones that are established and
Yeah.
dive into those are,
And it's
they will
giving
thrive.
people time back in their day, right? So it's giving them time that they're now spending on in endless loops in customer support calls. It's giving them time back to take care of their families and commute potentially.
I couldn't agree more. Time, our most valuable asset, right? And when we don't get to waste it and we feel better with it being relieved, what does that do? Well, helps conversions ultimately, right? uh, all of this here, right, I kind of leads up to a great question, probably my favorite question. Um, I'm big on inspiration, motivation, educators in the space, the whole nine. Are there any specific books or other resources that have inspired your entrepreneurial growth in just as a business owner and in marketing as a whole? And if so, what were those books and what was it that inspired you?
I'm glad you asked that. So, with Edward Schein's recent passing, for those of you who aren't familiar with who he was the thought leader for what is called the humble inquiry, and he developed a future further pieces of content, excuse me, around being a humble consultant. So what I like to train my staff on, and the other fractional leaders that I place, is around it's this philosophy that one adaptive move leads to another. So oftentimes people forget to be curious and ask questions and make assumptions. And in the consulting space in particular, we often come in, do a discovery call, have a kickoff, and come to a solution immediately. And Edgar's philosophy is that you should not jump to solution. You should ask questions for as long is needed to figure out what the true problem or pain point of the customer is. Again, it's one adaptive move leading to another instead of jumping to solution.
I love it. I love it. That's, it couldn't be more true. The problem solving, right? Of why people are buying and understanding your audience. People need to invest time. I think you see this well too. And companies need to invest in infrastructure to understand their potential clients, their customer avatar, as well as the product that they're pitching, right? If they don't understand what their needs are,
Hmm.
and you need to know them like it's yourself.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree. Couldn't agree more. Um, predictions for the future. Talk to me about your thoughts on predictions for the future in the industry and how you and your business are going to be staying ahead of the curve.
So I think that the fractional space is very exciting. we all know, especially HR folks and talent acquisition folks and leaders, that fully loaded headcount has become something that at times can be hard to quantify. So I'm excited about the traction that fractional leadership has been producing in all industries, all segments. So it could be a fractional COO, a fractional HR individual, fractional CMO. In my case, I feel that we should not over index on fractional C-suite placements. However, I think that a fractional director or a fractional VP could be something that will benefit organizations that either don't have the skills yet needed on the team, or have had attrition or somebody leave suddenly, or if they have a key beat coming up, a go to market, an area where they would benefit from somebody either bringing in that additional expertise or just steering the ship so that it doesn't run into the shoal. So I think that the fractional space is very exciting, and I'm enthusiastic to see where it goes, because I think it can have a lot of value to organizations.
I agree again with what your comment was too. Pivoting off of that too, I'd like to know your thoughts on, I see in the industry there's, let's call it a specific vertical, maybe it's dentistry or something along those lines. And there could be, who are we looking for? We need someone in marketing who has done dentistry before. They're an expert in dentistry. And that versus someone who's maybe hasn't done something in dentistry and they're able to think outside the box, and potentially the whole suite. So you're like, we didn't think of that one. Well, and with what you're offering and with that fractional role, it's not just we're stuck in one vertical. You've got experience in B2B, B2C, large, mid-size, consumer product good, all over the place. So what kind of, in kind of piggyback off that last one, what kind of value, which is immeasurable, right? Do you think that adds to companies, just really just helping with that fractional component there of they've got experience in everything and really think outside the box? Does that sound fair in
Yeah, I
agreement?
mean, and you can slice it by vertical, like you said, by industry, by language, by region. So it is very important to at times have an individual who knows the industry or the sector, but there's tension there, right? You can get the fresh ideas. So I've deployed a lot of software and a lot of hardware, and I have this joke that I tend to go into hardware environments and launch software, and software environments and launch hardware. So, for instance, at Microsoft, I find myself launching pieces of hardware. I think that why I'm bringing this up is that um, you can bring learnings like Agile, leveraging lean and Agile principles into another environment than which they were intended, and come in with those fresh ideas on how to solve a problem. So I'm not sure if that answered your question
No,
directly,
absolutely.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. And also in that area too, which is kind of coming to my mind, I know you'd have some great insight as well too. With the size companies that you've worked with, not many of the people I've spoken with, there's companies that work with startups early on, small, mid-size. You mentioned there's some big players out there that you worked with. And with the folks that have been either in the company for 20 years or more or so, the amount of times I've heard the reference phrase, that's not how we've done it before, or we haven't done it this way, or I don't think that's going to work.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts in a roundtable discussion or a boardroom when something like that comes up?
I ask what has worked. As a consultant or a fractional leader, you're there because something's not working. So it goes back to the humble inquiry. Um, what have been the things that have worked the best for you? Where have there been challenges? And then when you look to moving toward a solution, the questions then become, while we fix things, what shall we not break? So glad you brought that up, that things are working well, or you don't think this is working. But making sure that you're very thoughtful about examining the difference between the two.
I love it. Okay. I think I agree with all those pieces there. And I think, yeah, as we're evolving and these fractional roles are coming more about and the success from bringing in a fractional team, uh, word will spread, continue to spread more and more. Is there, before we go to the last question here, is there any specific client you've worked with, you don't have to name the exact clients, where talk about a success story where maybe things are broken, um, or they didn't know they were broken. You're able to come in, really ramp it up, give them a different level of motivation, vision, strategy, mission, all the above, and they just triumphantly are soaring with revenue now. Is there anything? I'm sure a lot of clients, but anything in particular that sticks to you?
Well, I think of the time where I set up in what I call an agile marketing cell for a manufacturing client, and they already had licenses and seats to Jira. They had the manufacturing floor that already understood Kaizen and daily stand-ups and visual management. And I came into the organization and I helped them staff a team that would be able to do all the work that was needed in the marketing realm: web, back end, front end, web dev, content, creative, Marcom, campaign management, analytics, SEO, etc., and got them successfully deploying all the work that they were doing in sprints, which is just a time boxed period, right? Where you can organize and size projects. And why it was successful was that it was excruciating in the beginning because people have to be willing to think critically and change. And asking for behavior changes is very, very tricky.
Mm.
Once they realized that the goal of the exercise was to be more efficient and therefore make their budget more efficient, they also were able to see that the person in the position of the scrum master or the project manager, the program manager, was actually there to remove barriers for them in production. So the first stand up that we had, I saw all of the eyes in the room light up because the writer could say, I'm not getting feedback from the business unit manager on that. And so the project manager, the scrum manager can say, okay, I'm on it. I'm setting up a meeting right after. We're going to fix it. We're going to get that feedback. So I believe that that was a successful project. It took a moment to get set up, and it took a few iterations. The whole attitude of Agile is continuous improvement. So you're not going to solve it in one cycle, in one sprint. It takes many sprints, many revs, but the organization is still using the framework that I set up, and I feel that they're moving more quickly than ever with higher quality, hopefully.
Fantastic. Very well said. I think it hits the nail right on the head there. The eye-opening experience when and the whole, why did I think of that moments, right? But when you bring in someone who knows what they're doing and is able to put the right team in place and have the right outside, well, thought process, right? Ultimately, that drives them to hit their goals and put that in perspective. That's it's amazing what can be accomplished.
Yeah, and
I
create
love it.
visibility to the process because you have planning
True.
sessions and retrospectives and you have backlog grooming. So you look at the backlog, everyone who's made a request of that marketing team knows exactly where their request stands, when it's going to be completed, or if it's going to be moved to a further cycle.
Excellent. Excellent. Well said. Perfect. Very informative for everyone watching, even for myself too, which is great. So, one of my favorite questions here, which I'd love hearing the answers on. Let's suppose you're given the opportunity to mentor a young entrepreneur. Maybe this is you as a younger person, for example, and you can only give them one piece of advice, maybe even two, let's say, right? What piece of advice would you like to impart on them and why?
Okay, so I am going to quote a musician. So Modest Yahoo has a lyric that says, let go of what you know. So we spoke briefly, Joe, about the some of the younger individuals out there in the population, super excited about their careers, offering opportunities for coaching and YouTube tutorials on how to do things. The advice that I would give and that I was given is forget what you know. Let go of what you know, because what you know is not necessarily the skills that you're going to need to carry you forward. And we all have strong attachment to what we feel we know. And there are so many things to learn in marketing and in being a leader and in being a good teammate.
I
Back
couldn't
to
agree
the
more.
humility piece.
Yes, agreed. There hasn't been a year that's gone by where I said, I was smarter last year than I was this year. Yeah, I learned more on that previous one. It's it's ever evolving, right? And I think the wisdom that's a component with it is, again, resonates with the audience and the client more and more and more, depending on what you're selling, pitching, whatever the brand is, right? And they can feel it, they know it, and moving forward, it's more important now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. Well, Brooke, I can't thank you enough for all of your time here and speaking with me about the industry and your business. Anything else you'd like to talk about with your business? Any key components, or if there's the right client that may be watching this video right now, the problem they may be facing, you'd like to do a pitch to?
Well, I mean, you can see more on our website. So Martech Consulting Group is out there in the wild with a .com attached to it, and it's something that I'm returning back to Edward Schein, so it's coming in and being thoughtful. So if you're looking for a consulting boutique consulting firm who are very literate and speak very eloquently, you can depend on us to be thoughtful and to customize a solution that could address any of those pieces we spoke about before. So getting the capability gap analysis going, or doing a Martech stack analysis, or looking at possibly leveraging agile ceremonies to increase your efforts.
I love it. Excellent. Well, I'll be sure to put the link to your site below, and of course to your LinkedIn below as well, for all the users to click on that and learn more. I've been educated today on a lot of this topic, which has been fantastic. So again, I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing your journey, your company, your story, and the marketing insights to as many people as possible.
Thank you, Joe.
All righty.